about doing it all and making it all look easy, and this idea of balance. And you think about all these things that you want in your life, and the time that it is when you're having kids is often coinciding with the time, I think, when your career is in a friction. Like, you're either going to go one way or the other. Like, you're going to stay in middle management forever, or you're going to like actually hit that next threshold. And I'm not going to lie, it's hard. The cost of childcare is high too. And I think one of the greatest gifts I had was the fact that I was really unhappy at the time. And my husband, I told him, and he was like, so why don't you stop working? I was like, what? That's an option? And he was like, listen, we've always lived below our means so that we have, and I'll just say it even though, you know, my daughter is here, but fuck you money. And that was what it was. It was like, take some time off and figure it out. And I think that that time is something that I'm so grateful for, because I had the time to raise my kids, be with them. And that's a privilege that not everybody has. But I do think, again, if I could look at my life when I was 22 and think about the things that I did right, it's like living your life holistically and really thinking about all the things that you want in life and not just optimizing for one thing, because you'll get what you want in life. You've just got to be really clear with yourself about what it is. Like, if it's just money, I know a lot of rich people. I'm sure you do too. I can guarantee you that money does not equate happiness.
And many of them who've been just, massively successful didn't go out looking for money. They solved the problem in a big way for a lot of people. So it's, if you want to focus on money, go in finance, go in a hedge fund, take a small piece of a massive amount of money, and you'll have a high probability of doing it. Entrepreneurship is not a high probability way to make money. No. It's very difficult.
But in terms of roles, the jobs got bigger for me. So I had bigger roles. I had a seat at the table. The companies got smaller, but I got closer to really seeing what it looked like to be a founder. And I think that is a huge part of what success I may have had, is the community that I built along the way. Because the truth is, I think one of the most shocking things to me, and I'm a little embarrassed to say it, is that I thought I knew a lot more before I started this company than I did, because I was like, I worked in small companies, like I wear lots of different hats, I can do this, I know, I've been around it. And then I got into it and I was like, wait a minute, I know what a BOM or like a bill of materials is, but I don't know what it looks like. Is it an equation? Is it an Excel spreadsheet? Like I didn't know these things. And so not only, it's just impossible to know anything, but at the same time, if you can build the community around you that can help you answer those questions, I think that is invaluable. And I think for me, seeing it up close, like being close to other founders, demystified it a little bit, where I was like, oh, why not me? Like, why shouldn't it be me? And I think there is something in that kind of spirit of confidence that's really important that you need to do, because if you don't believe in yourself, like no one else is going to believe in you.
That related to that, is Sanjana here? You had a question on risk, taking risk?
Give her a product, Ellie.
Do you want to give it a
Hi, I'm Sanjana. It's so nice to meet you. Thanks so much for being here. I was watching one of your interviews where you
Nice.
Where you talked about betting on yourself, and my question is about. You talked about how there's no right time to get started. So I was wondering if you could share a little bit more about your mindset to risk a secure, or what might seem to be a secure career path, or the possibility of expensive career fulfillment, happiness, and personal success, and if you think a college student should reach a certain checkpoint first before taking others.
Yeah, I don't think it is this is not a great answer, but it depends. And I think it depends so much on your own mindset and your own ability to take risk and to learn. I do think mindset is incredibly important on this journey. I think a lot of people look at someone like Kylie Jenner and they're like, oh, she became a billionaire so early in her life. I look at her and I'm like, there's no overnight success there. She has been in that family on that reality show, working hard for years before she did that, right? So I think it just depends about what your appetite is and your ability to kind of risk things, right? Like I actually get really nervous when I think about, like, I run this program called Clean Beauty Summer School every year where I mentor. It's a mentorship and education program specifically for BIPOC beauty founders. And every year there are some people who will say to me, I put everything on my credit card. I'm so committed. I raised funds in a Kickstarter from all of my friends. I made my mom put money in and she doesn't have any. And I'm like, oh boy, that makes me really nervous because I am someone who grew up in a household where carrying debt was not okay. I've never had debt on my credit card, but that was like my immigrant background, right? Like if that's, but then sometimes I look at those same people and they own 100% of their company later, and I didn't. I started with friends and family. So I think it's kind of not a very satisfying response, but I think it just depends. And I think you need to really check in with yourself about who you are.
We're going to talk a lot about that, by the way, and do as I say, don't as I do. I did the least entrepreneurial thing out of undergrad and went directly to law school, so I did not become an entrepreneur until 29, but I hustled. But what I'd say is from 20 to 30 is the time before you have other responsibilities. It's the time of life to take risk. You don't have, probably don't have mortgages and a lot of things that you have to pay for. And so you have the least amount of downside. So think of it that way in terms of what you would give up. Is Carter here, Carter Ford? Carter, you had a good question since we're talking about friends and relationships about that.
Thank you, I'm Carter. Thank you again for taking the time to be here. When I was reading your article with Allura and your interview on that, what really resonated with me is when you talk about like your big break with your like friend in your entrepreneurship club. And as like an undergrad, I'm a third year and I'm like trying to emphasize like building those connections, especially like with leaving USC and outward semesters. What advice do you have for building those connections naturally without like forcing them too much?
And please share that story.
Yeah. So one, I think it's a lot of the things that Professor Belasco just said. I think one is just be nice. And I know that sounds so generic, but I have to tell you, it is a really small world. I don't care what industry you pick. I don't care, like, it is all the time. I am shocked by how small of a world it is. And maybe, I have lived in LA for a long time and that's part of it. But like, I guarantee if we sat here and played name game, I probably know your parents or something. I don't know. But it's a very small world. So in terms of how to do it, I think the main things are, again, it sounds really generic, but be nice and I think be reliable. If somebody, do what you say you're going to do and do it kindly. And if there is a choice to be kind, do it. And that sounds super generic. I will tell you in the case of how I ended up raising money. So I kind of took you through the chronology of my background. After Charlie got into preschool, I started feeling that itch of, I really want to go back to work full time. I don't think there's anything wrong with being a stay-at-home mom. It wasn't enough for me from like, I think an identity perspective, an ego perspective. I wanted to really, I didn't feel like I was like using my brain and solving problems the way I wanted to. And Charles, this guy that I went to business school with, I had said, we were the co-presidents of the entrepreneurship, it was the EVMA. I don't know if they still have this,
Yep.
but the Entrepreneurship Venture Management Association. And we had always kept in touch. But by the way, we weren't best friends. We didn't go to dinner together. We didn't like hang out together. But we always just sort of like, hey, what are you up to? Like we'd catch up for coffee here and there. He was hiring a CMO at one point. He tapped me and I was like, I don't know anything about software. And we just stayed in touch. And he always kind of knew about things going on. And so I caught up with him for coffee one day when I dropped Charlie off to preschool, walked around the corner and I had coffee with him. And I sat down with him and I was like, okay, so this is what I'm looking for. I want something funded. I want upside. I want like a senior role. I was ready to go back full time. And he looked at me and he was like, aren't you like turning 40 or something? And I was like, yeah. And he said, well, I thought you had always wanted to do something on your own. When we graduated from business school, he started a software company and he sold it. And I didn't know that. And when I graduated from business school, as I told you, I went to work. And so, for other people, that is. And he basically said, and I was like, well, easy for you to say, like, you did this, but I don't have a partner and I don't have money. And he said, well, if you have money, you don't need a partner because you can hire people. And I was like, well, I've got a mortgage and I've got 3 kids and I don't have money. And he was like, okay, well, what if I gave you half of the money that you need? How much do you think you need? And at the time I had just written a business plan for another person. And I said, I need 250. And I didn't have an idea, by the way. It was like, because I was looking for a job. I was like, I guess this idea would be a beauty brand. And he said, okay, well, what if I give you half of whatever you need? I said 250, and he said 250 is not enough. It's like building a house. Like, you're going to need more. It's going to take longer. If you can, you need 500. And he's like, I'll give you 250 if you can raise the other 250 in 30 days. Granted, it was Christmas and Hanukkah. Like, it was the worst time of the year. And I was like, okay, because who says no to that, right? Like, this is my shot. And I literally got in the car, I called my best friend, and I told her what happened, and she was like, we'll invest. And I was like, what? People have money? They can just do this? Like, I had no idea that people privately invested like that. Like, I had only seen, like, I don't know, Emily Weiss of Glossier, or like the Away founders, or people who, like, in my opinion, have these connections to like these big private equity or VC funds and this very glamorous background. And I just didn't consider myself in that same kind of cohort of people. And so I didn't think it was possible. And what really shocked me about this was, so one, the thing that he did for me was not only did he give me money, but he gamified it for me, right? He said to me, you've got to raise the 250. If I had gone to people and I said, oh, I'd like to raise some money, I think it would have been really hard for me. But instead I was like, hey, this thing happened. I've got to raise 250. Are you in or you out? It had a deadline. Do you want to do it? It created boundaries both for me and for the other people. He gave me terms. So I was like, here's a valuation, here's the whatever. And it just made it so much easier to have those conversations. And frankly, I only had a few conversations, and then word kind of started getting out. And then, like, honestly, Mike, who I was just talking about, who I went to business school with, has worked with me multiple times. By the way, is not an incredibly wealthy person, was like, I want to invest. I had, coworkers. I had people I had just known and have heard me say for so long, this is something I want to do. And they were like, of course I want to do this. I didn't even have an idea yet. They were just betting on me, and they weren't even, I did put together an idea, which is not the same thing as what I ended up doing, but I guess my point in that is when you're saying, how did I do it? I think I just showed up. Like, in my career, I showed up. I did what I said I was going to do. I don't think I'm so much smarter than everybody else. I don't think I am so much better than everybody else, but I do think I've been reliable and responsible, and I've cared about my work, and I've been nice to people. And I think, like, that might sound pretty generic, but it's actually not that easy to find. And I took it really seriously. And so I think the real benefit for me was in raising that money. I still think about this sometimes today. I'm like, had I raised money from like a bank or a private equity group or something like that, where it was a little bit more nameless for me, I don't know if I would have been so motivated. So even to speak about mindset, like, I am probably naturally a pretty lazy person, but I'm a highly accountable to other people person. Like, by myself, if I had used, even our own money, I don't know if this would have helped. You know what I mean? Like, I think I would have been like, oh, I don't know, okay. But instead, because I have, like, my best friend from high school, my best friend of all time, like, people on my cap table who I love and I care about, it was so motivating for me. And I was like, I want to make these people money. And I'm actually super happy to share it. So.
Yeah.
It's just a brilliant move and offer that he made to you, because the time pressure of I've got to raise this money in 30 days. Students and people always ask me, how do you know when it's, when you should commit or whether you, should quit your job, all those things. And there's no answer, but I will say this. The things in life that haven't worked for me are the things that I wasn't fully committed to.
Yeah.
When you are fully committed, you quit your job, there's no going, you start burning the bridges and you're full time on it. Things in life that have to happen tend to happen. Not always.
Yeah.
Things are out of your control, but like when you are committed, and especially when you are accountable to somebody else, and take someone writing a check to you, it's not only humbling, it's emotionally humbling. Like I would cry to think of like someone took their hard-earned money and said, I'm backing you, and it's a significant investment to them. It's not like just, here's $500,000. It's like, it's meaningful. So like that responsibility is massive.
Huge. And I think sometimes when I tell that story, people assume that I just have really rich friends, and I have to tell you that's not the case. I mean, a lot of it was in small checks. It was like, can me and my brother, I had a minute, and it would be like, oh, can me and my brother come in? We'll split it, or whatever it was. And to me, it was really motivating.
That's awesome. So, people think, do I start a business most people start a business to solve a problem, a unique way, and differentiate themselves. Kelly, Jan, Kelly, you here? No? Oh, there you go. I'm sorry, there you are. Go ahead. You had a question on differentiation, right?
Over there, like, try.
There you go. This is a good, it's a big talk show, Sorry. Thanks. Hold on. Here comes the mic.
And the product.
Nice.
By the way, that is our viral TikTok spray, our SOS spray.
Your question?
My question was related to an industry such as makeup where things are so similar. How do you differentiate yourself? I remember reading in a letter that you really focus on branding of your company. So what are some ways you really differentiate yourself in such a field?
So I think one of the benefits of being in the same industry for a long time, I think we've kind of talked about, I think I've learned a lot over time. I think one of the cons of working in the same industry is you kind of feel like you've seen it all and you can be a little bit cynical. So I remember one of the things in the very beginning that was really hard for me was figuring out exactly what you're talking about in terms of differentiation. Because I was like, everyone's done everything before, right? Like, there are things that I see today, like Black Honey Clinique, like that's coming back again. That was so popular in like the 80s and the 90s, right? So there's that same thing happens over and over again. This might sound, again, a little bit generic, but I think it is trying to solve a problem and being really authentic to it. So even Tower 28 started as a different brand and a different kind of product concept and a different demographic. Like what I raised money with was a completely different idea than where I am today. And again, frankly, it didn't happen. I think I was so good at telling other people's stories. Like if I think about Josie and Kate, like what I felt like I was really good at was being a really good number two. And not until I put myself into it, and I was like, from the very beginning, our products were made to be, I was using the National Eczema Association to figure out like what to use to wash my hands, to figure out my detergent, those types of things. But that I tried to make it not about me in the beginning. And not until I put my personal story into it and gave it the why of like why would I care about the National Eczema Association? Why does it matter? What's your reason to believe is kind of the thing we talk about. Did it actually, I feel like, happen for us in a certain sense? I think the customer today is so savvy and so smart. They just have so much information at their fingertips. If you are not authentic, they will sniff that out so fast. So whatever you do, you have to solve a problem, and it has to be something that like is a true problem and a true story, and it has a reason to believe. I think the other thing that I care a lot about, I've had product developers who've worked with me that are like, oh, beauty's all the same. We just need to get it like 70% there, and like the rest is marketing. And I don't feel like I have that. I don't feel like I have the ability to do that because not to say that celebrities and influencers can. I think now people need good products, but nobody was going to give me a shot if the products weren't good, I felt. And so I really focused on the product quality, and I focused on value a lot. So if you look at our products, our price point is basically like our entry level is 12 and our max is like 32. And to me, I was trying to be the entry level price point in a prestige environment. And I was trying to figure out ways of like, how could I deliver the most value to my customer by focusing on, like, so we spend as much money as anyone else does on the stuff on the inside of the product, so the formula, but I do try to save money on the packaging. So essentially I don't emboss, I don't foil, I don't do all these things that are really expensive. My unit carton isn't printed on the inside, it's only printed on the outside. And I try to deliver the most value I can to the customer. So to answer your question a little more succinctly, I think you have to figure out your white space. You have to figure out what it is that you can really add value to your customer and how you're solving their problem. And why you uniquely are the person to do it.
But you initially, did you build products for people with sensitive skin and eczema? Was that?
I did it, but I didn't say it.
Okay.
Because I did it for myself, but I wasn't promoting it that way in the very beginning. Because I didn't think about putting myself into it. So it's like we made the products the same way. I just didn't kind of promote it that way.
Talk about your initial advertising strategy, because people hear, to roll out a brand costs many millions of dollars nationwide if you're not having
not
a
this
platform.
one.
Right, typically,
Yeah.
Old retail nowadays. Did you have the benefits of, how did you launch? What was your strategy? How did you leverage influencers, and what did you pay them to post?
So let me pull back the curtain a little bit. I raised $500,000 before I launched. And then after I launched and I got into Sephora, so a year and a half later, I raised another $500,000. I have not raised again until the end of last year. I took a very small minority round from a private equity group, a minority interest, but we've been profitable the entire time. So even when you said like it takes millions to launch, it does not take millions to launch. We launched at Sephora.com. They don't order thousands of pieces to start. They order hundreds of pieces to start. So it doesn't have to cost a crazy amount of money, I don't think. But at the same time, you have to be mindful of, like, your only resources are time and money. You have to be really careful with how you spend both of those things. And I think my bigger issue was, like, on the money side, was learning how to spend it, as opposed to, like I said, we were profitable from the beginning. I had do you know Robin Ward? Maybe you do.
Very well.
Robin Ward. So Robin Ward was I was part of her female founder group, and she was my coach. And I remember her telling me, she said, Amy, nobody is going to pat you on the back at the end of this if you're like, look, I didn't waste your money. I still have it. And she's like, you need to go spend it and try. And I think that goes back to even like the mindset thing. Like, you have to think about, like, who are you? And like it was great to have this motivation of having like my best friends at the cap table who didn't have necessarily a ton of money to lose. But at the same time, it was also crippling in the other way because I was afraid to lose it. But I actually think constraints oftentimes are where creativity is born. Like, I look at a lot of these brands that have since fallen. Like, I don't know if you guys follow a lot of beauty, but like JVN, do you know who JVN is? Jonathan Van Ness, Biossance. So those brands recently just got bought for like JVN got bought for like 1.75 million or something. Like, not that much money on a relative basis, right, by the way. And I guess my point there is, like, they were overspending to buy their business. And so to answer your question, when we got started, we started on a Shopify website that we built with a template from Jess on my team. She started as an intern. It was her first job. And she's still with me now, but she built that site on her own. And we had a mood board on Instagram, and we packed by ourselves these little, like, it was honestly not very fancy. It was a box with shred in it and our products in it. And we went on, I don't think influencers do this as much anymore, but they used to keep their addresses on their YouTube pages. If you look at like the info section. So we just went and we were like, who do we think would like this? And we stalked them, and we put together a list of like, I don't know, I think it was like 100, 150 of them. And we wrote handwritten notes. right? Because who doesn't like to feel special? And it was like, "Dear Nicole Guerrero, hope you and your dog, Cash, are doing well." Because I just stalked you. I know you love lip gloss. Hope you love this one. XOXO, Amy, the founder. And like, sometimes people would open them, sometimes people would throw them away. But like, a lot of times people opened them and they would just organically talk about it. Nicole Guerrero, I don't know if you know, she's kind of an OG. She literally opened it and this is maybe a month after we launched it, she opened the box. She tried on the lip gloss on screen, on a story. And then she showed images of herself videotaped herself buying the product. She's like, "I loved this so much, I'm gonna buy 10 more. And she showed herself doing it. I didn't see the post go up at night. I woke up in the morning, I thought our website was broken. We had sold, I think we had 1,500 followers overnight and 150 orders, which at the time was wild, right? And I was like, there's something wrong. Like, I don't even know where this came from, because I think we had like 50 likes on each post. Like, it was really, I hadn't even told my friends. I hadn't even sent an email blast to my friends to be like, "Hey, like, I'm doing this thing," because I was nervous. I was like, do we have product market fit? I don't know what this is. But yeah, so in the beginning, I think it was a lot of being really scrappy, but I would argue that we're still scrappy today. So the team today is like 25 people.
Wow, still very nimble. I'll ask one or two more questions and I'm going to open it up to the students. Can you share the story about how you spoke about authenticity and that you have to represent yourself and sort of listen to your gut when you sort of represent the brand? Can you tell this story of how you pitched in One Sephora and why popsicles are important?
Yeah. So I think like one thing that, again, like back to advice, I would say, and being kind, some of the same things we've been talking about is because I worked in the same industry for a long time and had relationships. I knew Sephora would have a conversation with me, but I didn't, know that they were going to say yes. So I saw my merchant who, she was a coordinator when I was like a VP. So she was literally the person who like just filled out paperwork, like kind of came up, like took notes during the meetings. And I was nice to her. I don't think, and when it came time for me to pitch, she had been promoted at that point. It had been years. She was now the director of clean makeup. So she was in charge of the whole thing. I saw that she had been promoted and I was like, I could see her, we were friends, I could see her like liking our posts, one of 50 people. And so I wrote to her and I was like, "Hey, I've got this brand, I'd love to pitch you." And she was like, "Great, come on in." And I was like, "What? Okay." And I think one of the best pieces of advice I got was, so I have a mentor who's worked in the beauty industry for a long time, and I was planning on being really linear about it, like almost academic about it, right? I had put together like a deck that showed the need gap. I had talked about like, where I sat in that, like, all of the typical things you do in a business plan. I was planning on showing it and whatever. And she was like, "None of that, Amy. You need to show your vision." She's like, "And outside of," so in case you don't, Tower 28 is actually named after a real lifeguard tower in Santa Monica. It's at the intersection of Santa Monica and Venice. And it was always this concept to me of like, I don't know, I've lived in LA for a long time. To me, Tower 28 is almost this embodiment of like a love letter to LA for me. Like, I think of the beach as this place where everybody gets to enjoy a clean and healthy lifestyle, and you see all types of people, all colors of people, all, everything. And so she was like, "That is a story you need to tell." She's like, "Not all this number stuff on the deck. She's like, "I don't care if you need to bring in sand. I don't care if you need to bring in like the actual beach, like sound." We looked into hiring men dressed up as lifeguards at one point because we were like, maybe that's what we do, which by the way, you can do. But like that was the concept of it. She's like, "You need to sell your vision so they can understand your story." And I was like, okay. And so instead what we did was we made, and I'll never forget, we took pieces of paper, printer paper, and we bought popsicle wrappers off of Amazon. We taped them to the printer, to the paper, and we fed them individually through the printer so that they were branded. So we had these popsicle wrappers that said Tower 28 on them, and they looked custom. But really, we just made them on the printer at the Riveter, which was like the local WeWork. And then when we got there, we went to the downstairs, like kind of grocery store right next to their office, and we bought popsicles, and we literally pulled off the popsicles and stuck them inside, and we put them inside of like a little cooler, which we cricketed. I don't know if you know what a cricket is, but we cricketed this little cooler. The two girls who worked for me, that still work for me, we went to Sephora. We opened, the doors open of the elevator. We get off, and we're wearing like branded merch, and we've got this popsicle thing. And then one of the girls had made this like summary playlist, and we were like, this is so awkward. You could have heard a pin drop, because offices are quiet, right? Like, it was just, I cannot explain to you how awkward it was. And we were like, okay, do we just like, I don't know, do we do the plan or not? And we were like, okay, let's just try. And so we turn the music on and we start walking around, and then everybody's just like in cubicles doing their thing. And then all of a sudden this girl pops up and she's like, Amy? And she was my intern when I was at Smashbox. And she went to USC, by the way. She was younger than me. And she stood up and she was like, Amy? And I was like, Anna? And she was like, guys, come here. She got everybody at Sephora to come around. And she was like, this is Amy. She used to be my boss. And they're all taking the product and they're all trying it. I had my meeting with the merchant, and she calls me and she's like, I don't know what you did, but like and we handed out popsicles, and she's like, everyone from ops to customer service to finance to whatever, they're all like raving about your product, because we handed out our product too. And she's like, and they're all saying, we don't take you, we're like the dumbest merchants around. And literally we got, not only did they say yes, but they said, yes, we'll put you in all stores, which not even Lady Gaga got that. Like, I didn't even, like, it's really hard, and it's not because she's not amazing, obviously, but it's very hard in a store environment to give you space very quickly, and for them to do it in all stores is a very hard thing to do. But like, that's what happened. So we went from a half shelf to a full shelf to 2 shelves, and now we're in all stores, which is pretty exciting. But I think the other lesson there, which I will just quickly add, I feel like I'm talking a lot, is like patience too. I think they told me that I was they've been trying to get us to, we're on 2 shelves, and because we're in a multi-branded area, basically I don't pay rent, if you will. Like, I don't pay for those shelves, I don't pay for the visual merchandising. I'm kind of like a squatter, I'm just there. When we were going from 1 to 2, they offered, years ago, they offered for me to do a branded end cap. The difference is when I do a branded end cap, I pay. I have to pay for that space. I have to pay to maintain. It's like, moving out on your own. And I was like, I'm cool. I think I'm just going to stay on your space for a while. And that actually, they were like, literally no one has ever said this to us. But because I did that, by the way, we launched at Sephora February of 2020, right before COVID hit. Had I gone into an end cap sooner, I think it would have potentially not gone well, right? Like, I didn't have the productivity, I didn't have the revenue to make up for that. So I think there is something to like the timing of things and being patient with yourself, but also betting on yourself.
Yeah, I can imagine that feeling of just like, should we really go for this, or should we play it safe? So, as we always say, win or lose on your best pitch. Don't ever hold back. Like, if you've got something ready to go, don't hold it back. And always be memorable too. I mean, not for the sake of being memorable, but she had the entire company voting for her.
Yeah.
Not just the buyers.
Well, and I think just like thinking about who are the influencers. There are always people influencing the decision, right? So in that situation, not only is my merchant an influencer, but like, the merchant is friends with the person in ops, or is friends with the person in customer service, right? Like, they all talk to each other. So I think that made a difference.
Well, let's open up to questions, but I want to start with, is Mason Green here? Mason, you had a pretty interesting question. And then, where's the mic at? Yeah, so we'll open up for questions after that. And if Madeline Birnbaum, if you still think your question hasn't been answered, then ask it after that.
Hello, thank you for being here today. So I read an interview online where you talked about, you mentioned it here today, how you should tell people your idea because you don't know who can help you. But as young entrepreneurs, we're kind of, especially myself, I'm kind of scared to tell people, this is some grand idea I have because someone may steal it. So is that a fear that, young entrepreneurs should have, or should we be telling people our ideas and, trying to find help?
I personally think that ideas are a dime a dozen. I think it is 100% the execution of it. So I don't know, like I help, like I said, I have this like mentorship education program. I help a lot of my competitors. I actually really strongly believe in the concept of like collaboration over competition, and it's something that it's an ethos of mine that I also live, because I feel really strongly about it. And I really just think, especially as a woman and a person of color, like we will all get there faster and stronger if we do it together. And I think the idea, like the way that you see, like say you wanted to make a shirt, like the way that you made a shirt would be totally different than the way that I made a shirt. So I just don't think that if we're both making shirts and we both found a great manufacturer, like we're gonna have different patterns. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. I don't subscribe to that idea so much, but
Unless you truly have IP.
Unless you truly have IP.
That like it's software or something but it's all about execution. And then also, Sarah Blakely made this comment. She didn't tell people early on because ideas can be fragile in the beginning.
Yes.
And if you tell the wrong people and they can tell you all the reasons why it can't work, it can affect you. So like you tell it to people that you trust, but at the right stage, it's only about execution.
Yeah, but I also agree with that, because there are a lot of times, like I said, my brother is an architect. He has been in Dwell magazine. He, in theory, has a really strong sense of design. He was like, I hate your logo. It is the worst logo I've ever seen. And it really got in my head, but I was also like, you're not like my target demographic. I don't know. I think it's going to be okay. But there is something to that. And even when you hire people or when you think about working with people, I think one of the most important things you can do is to hire people who believe in you and believe in what you're doing, because that energy is palpable. Similarly, and on the other side of it, I've learned this the wrong way, but if you hire someone and you sense anything is toxic or cancerous, negativity spreads a lot faster than positivity. So just being mindful of who you keep company with, I think really does affect your headset. Oh, I don't know if I'm allowed to call people, but
a little bit more here, and then you can call on people as they raise their hands.
Hi, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah.
That was amazing. And I love Power 20. You talked a little bit about being afraid of failure, and in an interview you describe yourself as a risk-averse person, and I can really relate to that because I have a lot of ambition. So I know that can come with many challenges, especially how you describe your path with all of these different things. How is being naturally risk-averse or afraid of failure challenge you, and how has it been a benefit to you as well? And then I have a follow-up question for that.
So I think the challenging part is I didn't start this until I was 40, which I would also argue is a benefit. So it's easy to say these things in hindsight, right? But I think that we as a society really, personally, I feel like that we have made entrepreneurship a little bit too sexy, and we've made it seem too easy, and social media has made it seem like, oh, everybody is young and rich and I'm behind. There was actually this, a friend of mine sent me this, there was this TikTok that was like, oh, if you're in your 20s and you're like me, you just feel like you haven't gotten there, look at this old lady. She didn't start this until she was 40, and it was a picture of me. She's like, she's got 3 kids and she did it. You're gonna be okay. And I was like, oh, thank you. Which, listen, there's 2 sides to every coin. I would argue, because it happened later in my life, I think that the success that we have had has been a lot more digestible. I'm friends with a lot of young entrepreneurs, and I think it's hard when you're young to experience a lot of success because you don't know, if it's luck, if it's, you know what I mean? That's different in its own way. So I think in that sense, the being risk averse has helped me because I've also been able to like, I've built a family, which is really important to me too. I think a stronger person and an entrepreneur. I think the fact that I've worked for other people makes me a better manager because I've been an employee. Like, I know what it's like to work for a crazy founder. And I'm not saying I'm not a crazy founder, but I'm saying I think I'm a little bit less crazy because I at least have the proximity to it, right? And I have the empathy of what it looks like. So I think those were some of the benefits. The cons of being risk averse, yeah, I just took longer. I had a harder time. Even now, I have a hard time spending money sometimes where I'm like, we still haven't paid influencers, by the way. I can't think of another beauty brand that is our size that has not paid influencers. It's not because I don't care and I don't value people's work. It's because it's almost like a very polar thing, like where either you pay or you don't, and then if you pay, you're paying a lot of money. And so I'm more like in the business of just being like real nice and making great products and hoping people love them, you know, and that they will organically talk about them. And so far it's served us really well.
Questions, hands?
Oh, I don't know. You can call them people. Here, I saw you first.
Yes.
Pass the mic. You think you can?
Thank you. Just the first one, I want to say, like, you're very inspiring, just being a woman and everything. Like, you're super successful. With that, I just want to ask, like, you know, like, society has like just made it seem like being like a successful businesswoman and like a mother is kind of impossible. But obviously, it's not because you're doing it. And I just want like to ask, like, what do you think about this, and what advice you can give to women that are looking to pursue both?
So I think the advice I will give you all is not only for women, but for men too. I think the most important decision you will make that will dictate your happiness in your adult life is who you marry. I think the fact that my husband and I met young, we've been together for 23 years now. I think the fact that he supports me, I mean, I actually don't know that many. So my business tripled year over year this past year. So 23 to 2022, our business tripled. And it was just growing. I mean, I had 12 employees last July. So things have kind of been like this very fast ramp. And my husband quit his job in finance and started working for us. And I think about like the humility that takes, the chance it takes. And like, I don't know a lot of other men who can like work for their wives and who can support them. And I think we're like genuinely partners where like, I honestly, like, it's like my business is like our fourth child almost. We have 3 kids, one is in boarding school. So to answer your question about how do you do it with help. You do it with, you're not proud about it. Like, these kids have had a lot of babysitters in their lives, and you just try to show up, and you try to make sure you show up. So like, I don't know, maybe they can answer for you, but like, we try to make sure we show up for the important things all the time, and that we're balancing between the two of us, because you can't do it all. But the things that you do, you can be present and good at.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, I keep going this way. Here, I think earlier you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where'd you pick?
So basically, I just wanted to ask about your personal relationships with your seed investors, mainly in like the first period between the investment and your launch. How you kind of handled being personally attached to those people. Like, I couldn't imagine meeting like a friend for coffee and then they ask me, "Oh, I invested my savings in your company. How's it going?" Maybe you don't have that much concrete things to tell them, or maybe they give you unwarranted advice. Or was that not a problem at all for you?
It wasn't really a problem. I did investor letters, and I still do, but actually now that I think about it, really rarely. But I think they just kind of know that things are okay. I wrote investor letters. I think that's one thing that I did. But I think the other thing is I've been on the other side of it. So we have personally invested actually only in one thing that didn't pan out, by the way. And so I feel like I have empathy for, like, this has gone well. We've made our initial investors a lot of money. And like, when I think about how the opposite side of that, like how our friend that we invested in, he shut it down, right? And how hard it is to have those conversations. And it created a lot of empathy for me to be like, okay, how should I be managing these relationships and thinking about it? I think I was proactive about making sure that they understood what was happening, so they didn't really come ask me. But at the same time, like, I think I try to be really mindful now of what it's like on both sides. I don't know if that answers your question, but I think there's a part of it where you have to be prepared for it if it doesn't go well, and like keeping them posted as you go. Like, and he did that. Like, I know he tried, and we're not like mad, but also the other thing is, like, so my best friend, when she offered to invest, I actually took half of what she offered, because I was like, listen, if this doesn't go well, I'm not going to be comfortable. Like, I'm not going to be able to go out to dinner with you. I'm not going to be able to do those things if I lose that amount of money. This is what I'm comfortable with.
Good answer.
So.
Keep going.
That's so daunting
Give
here.
Give the mic to someone here.
You guys are awesome, by the way. Just throw around more products. Over here.
Well, we'll get to you next. He's got the mics. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, my fault.
Sorry. You talked about how your team has increased a lot in the last year. What would you say about like how you developed that team of people that you brought on? Like, what is it that you saw in your company as like consistent values or that kind of ensemble?
So we actually have a set of values, and we call them our HAWK values, and that stands for hustle, ownership, cool, which sounds kind of generic, and Kaizen. Kaizen is actually a word that I learned here at USC in business school when I took operations class, and it's actually, Kaizen is a term that gets used in manufacturing often when they talk about just like the iterative process of improving something for better. And it's kind of one of the things that we really, as an organization, live by. Like, I don't care if something gets messed up. I don't want to do it twice. Like, how do we make sure we don't do it? So we actually have this culture of, like, we do postmortems after, like, we throw an event, we do a postmortem. We launch a product, we do a postmortem. And I'll just go backwards. C is cool, and that kind of is what we were just talking about earlier. It's just being nice and being respectful. I think I don't need to be best friends with someone, but I do think when I hire, like, should I go to lunch with you if we go on a trip, like, and I'm sitting next to you and traveling with you, you know, like, how does that feel and like, how would I feel like sharing my contacts and my reputation with you? And I think those are really important things to think about, right? Like, I care a lot about my reputation in general, so I want someone to be acting in a way that represents me. Ownership, it's kind of the same thing we were saying earlier. Like, I say a lot to my team, I'm like, if I throw a ball, catch it. You know, like, if you throw me a ball, I need to catch it too. Or tell me you can't catch it. Something has to happen there. And hustle, I think, is like, that's just what entrepreneurship is, like figuring out a way and understanding, like, not the action, but understanding the purpose and trying to figure out how to get there. And so, like, ultimately, to your point, like, growing a team really quickly is not an easy thing, because the thing that is the most important is to maintain culture, because it can feel like it has its own energy to it. Like a business is like a living thing, where I say this all the time to people, but I think it's really true. I actually feel like one of the things that has made us really successful is I think the people on my team care, and you can't pay people to care. You can pay people to do their job, but you can't pay them to give a shit. And so I think the difference is that people care on my team, and I think the consumer can feel it, whether it's through social media or whatnot. Like, I also take, like, so twice a year I take my team on retreats. We don't pay influencers. We don't take influencers to Dubai like other brands do. No names mentioned. We take our team on, I took my team to Italy. I took my team to Palm Springs. Like, we do these things so that we have a chance to meet and connect, because we work in a hybrid environment. And so it's important to me that, like, you still have that communication, because ultimately I think people don't quit jobs, they quit managers. And you need to create that trust and bond so that communication's there. I like don't know. I want to sit here because I made eye contact with you. Oh yeah, but here, sorry, see, I'm so bad at this. You want to call people? Yeah. I'm like, I feel really like I'm not aware.
You do need the mic your back.
Here, you can call people.
Hi.
Hi.
Thanks for being here. My question is kind of similar to another one, but a bit more internally focused. As humans, we have a lot of identities, whether it's entrepreneur, mother, wife. I guess my question is, in life, do you feel like it's always an effort to constantly balance it all? Or is there cycles where you have to focus on one identity before another?
So someone told me this some time ago, and I think it's really true, that you can have it all, but you can't have it all at once. And I think that's really true. But at the same time, it doesn't mean you can just focus on one thing and forget the other things, because there's only one way forward. You only have so much time in your life, and if you don't pay it, like if I didn't have kids, I have a lot of female founder friends who are like, I'm gonna freeze my eggs because I can't do this and have kids. And I'm like, okay, except it'll all work out. Like, I don't know, like you gotta do you, and you've gotta think about your life holistically. I don't believe in balance. I believe in prioritization. And I think you can only do a few things really well. And it's exactly like what Professor Belasco said earlier. I believe in focus. So you've got to pick a few things that are really important to you and stick with them and try not to be distracted. But this idea of balance, I feel like is a little bit like when I see people on social that are like, first I wake up and then I have my celery juice and then I write my gratitude journal and then I do my vision board and then I'm like, I mean, okay, you? I don't know. That's not my life, but maybe it is for other people and it works with them. I don't know.
Who's got questions? We got a couple more.
Victor Lou, do the products.
They're taking a break.
Hi.
We have child labor laws here.
Family business.
So I was just curious because you mentioned how when you first created your brand, your logo, you asked your brother. So I have an older brother too, and like it's weird because I like actually really care about what he thinks about
Me too.
things. And so when you said like, oh, do you like this? And he goes, no. So I just like in a more general sense, what do you sort of do when you get like how do you navigate and differentiate through criticisms that sort of will affect like how you think your vision or sort of just make you second guess yourself for a second,
Yeah.
and criticisms that you're like, wait, that's actually good for my product and my vision.
Yeah, I think it's a really fine balance, and I think it depends on who you are. For me, I am somebody who asks, right? So I will, and my husband says I'm the worst because he's like, you don't actually care what anyone thinks. You'll just do what you want to do. And that is a little bit true. But I like to hear what everybody thinks, because some things will like don't you find when you say something to someone and they respond, that they like either it'll resonate with you in some way, like whatever they're saying. Like sometimes, generally speaking, even the mistakes that I've made, which I've made many, I look back and I'm like, oh, I knew. I kind of knew. I wanted a different outcome, but I went forward with it anyways. By the way, one of my biggest mistakes, we launched a product called Juice Bomb. We put it in, and it's now different, but it was so melty and creamy and beautiful, and I knew it was a little too good to be true. It was too melty, and we launched it inside of a Sephora kit, like a bestsellers kit, and we started seeing the reviews, and they were either like a 5, we love this, it's so melty and creamy, or a 1, this melted in my pocket. And I have to tell you, I kind of was like, I just didn't want it to be true because I loved the product so much. That truck was coming with the remainder of the product, so much product into our warehouse. And I was like, I called the warehouse and I was like, do not accept it. Because the minute you accept it, it's your property. I was like, you turn that truck to tell them to go back home. Like, take it back home. And I guess my point in telling you that story is you will make mistakes. I think it is like a muscle where you learn from your mistakes and you learn who to listen to and for what reason. On my team, Rosalie on my team loves makeup. but she's not like a pro artistry makeup, but she loves clean makeup. So I know when I'm talking to her, she can give me feedback on makeup, but she's not comparing it to Charlotte Tilbury. She's comparing it to like, other clean makeup. And so I balance that feedback. And I think ultimately you have to think about like, who is that person? All of us can only speak from the perspective that we have, the life experiences that we've had. And so you have to like filter a little bit, like where is that information coming from and why are they saying that? And then you still have to just own your own decisions. That is the biggest difference in being, I think, a CEO, is that you ultimately, everything is your fault and nothing is your, like, it's, the success is the team's, the failure is yours. And that's a burden from a decision standpoint.
Right next door, got the
Hi. I wanted to ask, I find it interesting that you mentioned, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you mentioned that originally when you promoted your product, you didn't mention it being a 100% vegan or, thank you so much, completely free of skin irritants, one of the only brands that does that. Correct about that?
So when we launched, we talked about the clean. We didn't talk about the NEA side of it, like the National Eczema Association side.
Okay. What I wanted to ask was, this being personal to you in your life, why did you not originally promote it as such, and what motivated you to do so later on?
I think we started doing it in press, and it felt like, so social's funny, right? Because you talk about things on social and you can see them comment, but you don't see their reaction. When you are with an editor, you tell them a story and you can see their eyes light up. It's real, right? And so I started, and I think I was, even now, I am face forward in a certain way, but like you will almost never see a get ready with me. Like I'm just not gonna be like, and then let me show you how to contour, and it's just not what I feel like I'm good at, or like what I feel like people want to see, frankly. So I think you have to kind of choose your spots in terms of like where, and that is actually something I'm thinking about more now, is how I choose my spots, what I want to be known for, how I want to spend my time. But to answer your question about specifically thinking about like how to putting yourself into it, I think again it has to be true to your own story. And for me, the reason I started doing it was because I was like, wait a minute, it actually does resonate with people, and they need to understand the reason to believe. They need to understand my why. Like there's that famous like Simon Sinek TED Talk, which if you haven't seen, I really think you should. But it basically is like people don't buy what you sell, they buy why you do it, or something like that. And I think it's really true. People vote with their dollars.
All right, got time for a couple more. Man, this could be a come back.
I know.
Who's got some good ones? I really know they got a good question. It's okay.
Who's got okay.
Hi, I wanted to ask, you talked a little bit about how right after you graduated undergrad, you went to Accenture in consulting,
Yeah.
and have done a lot of different roles since then. So I wanted to ask if you could tell us a bit more about how your previous role, whether like in consulting or even as a parent, and like what you've taken and learned from that, and how you've implemented that, and how you work with entrepreneurship and being a founder.
So I really believe in the idea of like not just change, but evolution. And so even when I thought about boyfriends, frankly, like I really was very mindful of it, where I was like, okay, so I dated this one person and he was so nice and he was this and that, but he was like not very smart. And so maybe the next one that kind of bothered me. So I'm gonna find someone who is like nice and good looking, but also smart. And then that didn't work out. Okay, because he was a little bit mean to the waiter and I didn't like that very much. So next I'm gonna find someone who's nice, smart, good looking, and nice to the waiter. And then like you learn your lessons. You know what I mean? Like you're like, okay, how do I not just change for the sake of change, but change and improve? So I get closer to the target and I get more familiar with what it is that I really want. And I would argue I did a good job. He is nice to waiters, the nicest guy you'll know.
Hi, thank you so much again. I'm so inspired by you and your story. So specifically wanted to ask about how you talked about like never really being willing to bet on yourself and like seeing yourself as more of a supporter, like really wanting to wait for a partner. And I was just wondering, like, as you propelled yourself into the position of starting Tower 28 and like finally getting the confidence to bet on yourself, like was that something that you built over time, or you just had to throw yourself into that position? And like if you ever struggled with imposter syndrome, and how you dealt with that as well?
I mean, yes to all of the above. I think, and I'll try to go backwards so I can try to remember it, but imposter syndrome, I think, is all the time. Even today, I was looking at the list that Professor Belasco sent me of like past speakers, and I was like, holy crap, like what? I am not worthy, right? But I think it's just a constant battle, and it's like a muscle that you kind of learn how to work with. One of my best friends, and the reason why this bet on yourself thing comes up for me, one of my best friends has been very successful in her life. And I remember saying to her, I'm like, how did you know so early in your life? Like we bought a house when I was 39. They bought a house when they were young. They've had these great, whatever. And I was like, how did you know to do that? Because I'm sure you know, but real estate has changed a lot in that time. And she was like, Amy, I bet on myself. Like, this is the thing I know better than anything else. Like, why would I bet on anyone but myself? And I think that really stuck with me, where I was like, oh, that's so true. So I would encourage all of you to bet on yourselves. I mean, the fact that you're sitting in this room today, I am well aware that it is not easy to be in your place now that I have kids who will be looking to go to colleges like this soon. And listen, you guys have, and if I can give, I'm going to have a little bit of a departure and give you a little advice that I feel like I got at this point. When I was in business school, I had a professor named Sandy Green. I don't know if you knew him. My last day at USC, or last class I had with him, I remember him saying to us as a group, he was like, listen, all of you like need to, like he wrote the words noblesse oblige. Has anyone ever heard this saying before? It's a French term, noblesse oblige. And it's like the noble are obliged. And it was the idea that like, you guys are in like one of the top institutions in not just America, but the world educationally, right? You've set yourselves on a path to achieve greatness, and you have a high likelihood of becoming really successful. So then the question is like, what are you gonna do with it? And I think that's something I think about a lot too. Like I feel I listen to How I Built This all the time, and I love like he asked that question at the end, which is like, how much of this is luck and how much of this is hard work? I think for everyone it is a combination of those two things. But to me, it's like not if you get there, but it's like, what are you gonna do with it at every level of that, right? And whether like we're all very much in a position of privilege in this room. So I think just thinking about how you can use that in a positive way.
That's a good one. We have time for one more. Wow, this class is on it. I gotta tell you. Sorry. We'll try and mix it up as much as possible. Nice hustle, by the way.
It's one of our values, hustle.
Thank you guys for being here. You said you were, when you first started, relatively risk averse. How did you kind of quiet the fear of failure and keep pushing yourself even when you have hard days when you feel like, oh, maybe I'm not going to be successful, or maybe it's not going well?
So it's funny, when I was raising money, I remember going to people and I was trying to raise money and people would say, well, if anyone can do it, it's you. And I knew that they meant that as a compliment, but it felt like so much pressure. Oh my God, I should have put it. And one thing that really helped me was, again, I can be somewhat academic about these things. And I was a mentor, entrepreneur, friend of mine. I was like, just tell me, like, what are the metrics I should, like, guide myself by? Like, what is a good amount of revenue? What am I supposed to hit the first year? What am I supposed to hit the second year? Like, what does good look like? I was like, I want a gold star. Tell me how to get it. What does a gold star look like? Give me definition. And he was like, listen, don't pay attention. It's not CAC, it's not LTV, it's not revenue. Just all you need to worry about is momentum. And it is such good advice. It is something that you can feel and you can't touch, you can't see it, but it is something where you're like, this is working. And there are moments in my journey, which frankly I'm having one right now, like in our business right now, where you're like, the fact that the number of people in this room raised their hand, I'm like, how the hell did that happen? Like, people know who we are and what we're doing. You're like, you can feel it when you're like, wait a minute, something is happening right now. Pay attention to that momentum, and it could be anything. It could be like, I remember the first time we were at a restaurant and I saw someone in the wild pull out my product. And I was like, oh my God, we were all like looking at her. She probably thought we were crazy, right? But those are like the moments that you need, the momentum you need to keep going, because you need that for yourself. You need to feel like, oh, the effort I'm putting, it is so much work. And it is really hard to get up the next morning and keep doing it if you don't like feel that what you're doing is working. I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, thank you.
we're running. I wanted to put something up and talk about full circle moments. When you sort of get to teach, there's nothing better for a professor than to see your students take off and thrive in their lives. I mean, it can be business, it can be family, it could be athletics, it could be whatever it is. Seriously, keep me in the loop, because we just love that. And so seeing a student from 20 years ago that I knew at that point was going to do great things just because of the way she approached everything. But as I thought about it, I found your first email.
Oh my God!
That you sent out in 2019. And just to think about, and you look at the bottom of it and all the things she's talked about. So I want to talk about, because you talk about being vulnerable and courageous. Whenever you see...
What's funny is I didn't send this email to friends until after I had launched at Sephora. I was so, I don't know if the right word is embarrassed, but I just was like nervous to share it publicly because it felt like, again, like a chance for failure. But yeah, so sorry, I didn't interrupt you.
No, not at all. So whenever you see a business, someone's made a courageous decision. It is really difficult to do. All the questions you asked about, when do you take the leap, when do you quit your job, how do you know? Because it takes courage. And so I want to close with, you talk about being vulnerable. What does that mean in business?
I think it's trying, right? It's just putting yourself out there. I felt like at the time, I had worked in the industry for 16 years, right? And I felt like, oh, what if this is a big failure? Everyone's going to be so successful. What if I'm not that smart? Like, I don't know, everything. What if? What if I lose all my friends' money? All of that. But I think being vulnerable is saying you need help. I think vulnerable is getting out there and trying. And I think it's letting people help you along the way, because it takes a village, like I said, and I feel so grateful for the one that I've had, because it is in the ways that you may not even know, but there have been moments where, like, honestly, someone just said the right thing to me at the right time and was like, you're gonna be okay. Like, this is how it's gonna go. And I think that's why I really believe in this idea of community so much, is I've had that benefit. I've been able to, Tony Coe, a friend of yours, is a friend of mine, and like I've been able to reach out to these other women who've like raised money, sold businesses, fired people. I remember the first time I had to fire someone, I was almost going to puke. I was so up in arms around it. Like, it just, and I had fired someone before in a corporate setting, but it was like my boss wanted me to do it, and I felt a little more like, oh, it's not my fault, whatever. But this was like my decision, and I'm very aware that these people have, like, you know, they have families to feed, all those things that go with it. And it was really, really hard for me. And I remember, like, what helped me was being able to go to friends and having them counsel me and say, like, this is how it's gonna go. Let me tell you how to do it. You're gonna hit these notes from an HR perspective, but also, like, for yourself, practice in the mirror, do, you know, whatever. And it has made such a difference to me to just have people to turn to. And so that's vulnerability for me.
Well, you can't ask for a better person to come, sort of that full circle from class, to come back with your family. We're so grateful to have you all here. Do you want to introduce them, please, to everybody?
So this is Charlie's already standing up. This is my husband, Victor, who is now our CFO, and this is our 24th year of being together, and we are, and to be clear, I don't to me, the accomplishment there is not the number of years, it is the fact that we still really love and like each other. I think that is actually really hard to do. My daughter, Ellie, who's 13.
We'll see you in 5 years, maybe?
Yeah. Who's 13, and my daughter, Charlie, who's just turned 9.
Well, it is the Trojan family. Come on up, say hello to Amy if you want to meet her family. If not, have a great week. We'll be back. Well, we have a code.
We have a discount code.
We have a discount code. If you want to get discount products.
So follow us on Tower 28 Beauty is our handle on Instagram and TikTok. And then also our discount code is?
Marshall15. Marshall15 for 15% off.
On our website. And then also I've got mascaras.
More mascaras for anyone. Have a great week. We'll see you next week. Light on. Oh, there you go. This is
There you go. Hi, Amy. Oh, yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Sorry. How are you? I love it.
It's nice to see her. She's like the best energy ever. Do you mind grabbing me one?
Oh, thanks.
Thank you, thank you. But nice to see you. Posture?
Thank you, Charlie. Oh, nice.
You have to look at how you.
Is this the line?
Aw, nice, thank you. That's so nice of you.
Awesome class.
Lately, we'll be hiring for interns. So keep, like, pay attention to our I think that's what you're looking. We do
Excuse me.
jobs. So if you're interested, we'll definitely.
Oh, you mean down to the back. Sorry,
What's up, Daniil? Good to see you, man. Oh, sick.
and she's taking care of that.
Molly?
Yeah.
What does that say?
In the blackboard section.